Hey, Jonathan here. Let's understand the navigation and user interface as we learn Rhinoceros foundations. Let's do it. When you run Rhino for the first time, you're usually greeted by this specific window, which would allow you to start a new model, to open another model, or to use one of these standard templates. Now, as I move through them, you're going to notice that it's basically about, they're divided into the size of the object you want to do, the units you want to work with. So in our case, we are architects, so we will be working with very large objects, and we're going to want to work in meters. So basically this one to start with. But in my case, in our case, you can download and install our 3D window, the 3D Johnny default template, which has already a couple of things changed away. But if you do not have it, don't panic, just use a large object into meters and you should be right on your way. We should double click on it and we should land at this basic setup. So let's take a look at where everything is and what am I actually looking at. So let's first divide our full window into different sections. We have side panel on the left, we have the side panel on your right side, we have icons on the top, we also have different tabs on the top, specific options, and of course the menu all the way up. Now there are many ways to model in Rhino. The menu bar is definitely the slowest one. So for example, if I want to find a command and I go to curve, line, single line, I can definitely draw the line, but to get there was very long and it's not considered best practice. Now the command line, you can see it on the left side in a Mac, and in Windows it looks like this. I'm going to show up a screenshot of this. The command line is on the top, and this is considered the best practice. For example, in this case, instead of going to menu and try to find an icon and try to see where everything is, the best practice in Rhino is to slowly but surely learn the commands, and that is why this whole course it's divided into them. So let's dive in and type in L-I-N-E line. So as you can see, it's going to help me out very quickly. Enter, and then we get different options. We always get a question, we get a command. Now you give Rhino a command and Rhino commands you back and tells you where's the start of the line. So you either have two options, either give him an input, meaning click somewhere, one, or tell it that you want to do something else and pick one of these options. Now it can be that most of them are not relevant right now and you won't understand many of them yet anyway, but the point here is that you can always mid-command take different routes to finishing whatever it is that you're going to finish. In this case, I'm going to click once. It asks me the second question, which is what's the end of a line? And then I notice here there's a button which says both sides. Now remember, nothing you do here is going to make Rhino explode in pieces and take you with him. So don't be shy and try to do something wrong a couple of times. So I just click on it and see what happens. And that's never a bad way to learn a new software. I did something, and then I can click a second point to define the end of the line. There's a third way of modeling in Rhino, which is through the icons. Now, anybody who knows Rhino know that there are no awards for the best design of icons. They're not really easy to understand, and they're placed sometimes in random spaces. But it's always a good idea for you to at least know where to try to find one if you needed to. So basically here, so you can click here and get the line command, and at the end you would do the same. Another line. So we did the same thing in 3 versions. Remember that the command line is the best practice in Rhino. Try to get accustomed by it. So for the icons, you either have relevant icons here on the left side, and you also have these tabs on top, which say, for example, standard, C-plane, set view, transform, solids. And every time you click up here, all the icons are going to keep changing because they have been arranged and organized by a specific subject. So for example, if we're going to build some solids, I click on solid tool, we're going to get solid commands. And if I want to save a file, which are our standard files, you can go here to start a new file or to save one. In this preliminary where everything is, it's a good idea to mention this. So on the right side, you also get this help menu. If you don't see it here, make sure that you can turn it on by going into your settings and clicking on command help. Make sure that that is on. And it's really handy. For example, if I start any command and I start clicking around, you're going to get straight away help that is related to what you are about to do. Sometimes even with videos that explain what you have to do. So it's a great way to start with what I teach you and keep going if there's something specific you want to learn. On the right panel, you're going to get, it's going to look a little bit different on your computer. You won't have this many icons, but you're definitely going to have the first one, which is the layers. It tells you which layers you are, depending, each object can be assigned a different layer. For example, this one is in the default layer. But if I want to draw in the layer 1, I click on 1, start the box command again and draw it. As you can see, it's going to be another color. You get the materials menu as well. There are no materials assigned yet, but we will get to that. And you also get the properties tab. Next to the panels on top here, which are more directed to a general, to the general functioning of the program, if you select a specific object, you will get a properties that is going to be changing and showing you relevant information that is object based. For example, if I click on the red cube, it's going to tell me that this cube is in the layer 1 and that it has a display color of red. I can even name it, or here change its layer to layer 4. And then now that cube is going to be green as the layer 4 intended. Next up is layers, views, and layouts. Now, layers are a way to organize the objects inside of Rhino. If something is in a layer 1 and something else is in a layer 2, I can, with my layer manager, I can turn off all the objects on the layer 2. This is like the most useful thing about the layers. But it goes further. I can tell Rhino that I want all the objects in a specific layer to have a specific line weight, specific material, a specific display color, and so on and so forth. So this is crucial, and we will be working with this a lot. Next up is the viewports. Now, I try to ignore it, but it's hard to do so. In Rhino, it's very particular, which is the way we are shown the work plate. As you can see here, we have 4 independent viewports that is showing me the same object in 4 different ways. Now we have here a perspective way. We are looking at it orthogonally from the right, orthogonally from the front, and from the top. This is the way that is intended to be used, because sometimes you might get lost or click on the wrong dot and you don't really know where you are. That is why it's very useful to keep this like this and get used to working with 4 viewports at the same time, even though it's a little bit smaller, but it's best practice. Then let's talk about the named views. For example, we can set up a specific view. In the perspective, you can zoom in and try to figure out what's the best way to show the object you're working with. And if you don't want to lose that, it's a good idea to save it. For that, you can start the command named view. It opens a panel on the right, click on plus, apply, and now you would have that particular view saved, meaning that if I change it, I can double click on it and go straight back to it. Okay? Something else that you can do are the layout. Now, how do I get all of this information out into a paper? For this, we have a completely different realm of Rhino, which is devoted for paper space. We go here into our panels. One of them is the layout. In this case, it's this little piece of paper. And here, for example, I could start a paper. Don't try to follow. There's a tutorial about this later. Just try to watch. Let's go and see. Let's start a paper that's called page 1, which is the size of a letter. Why not? We click apply. As you can see, Rhino is going to take me to a different realm. Now, notice how this suddenly looks completely different. And that is because we're looking at a piece of paper right now. And we are able here to select it, change its scale, check the position and how much am I showing. I can change the size of the paper. Pretty much answer the question of how do I get all this 3D modeling virtually out of the computer into paper. I can go back to my original setup. If I double click here, if I click on this icon here, which is the 4-view layout for Rhino. Let's keep going. Now that we know where everything is and more or less what Rhino can do, Let's concentrate now in trying to navigate it. Up until now, you have seen me move around, click here, click there, zoom in, zoom out, not really knowing how can you do this yourself. So let's try that right now. I'm going to delete everything just to have a clear view. If you want to follow, please feel free to do so. And you can start your box command, click 1, click 2, just as a reference. For that, let's start straight one by one to see what happens. Now with the mouse, if I scroll out, I'm going to be zooming out. If I scroll in, I'm going to be zooming in. Try it out. Not only on the perspective, also in the front view, the right view, and of course, the top view. Now let's concentrate on the perspective for a second. If I right click on the mouse and hold down the control key at the same time, I should be able to zoom in and out as well. If I right click and hold down the shift key, I'm going to be able to pan this around. Now if I right click, only right click, I should be able to orbit. Now if what I'm saying is not what's happening, don't panic. I will explain how to change the mouse behavior later in this foundations video. But let me just show you more or less what your mouse can do. Or maybe try to find the same commands with the setup that you have yourself. For example, if you select an object, shift control, you can orbit around that specific object. Let's keep going. Let's move on to talk about selection. Now, right now, I'm going to model a couple of extra boxes just to illustrate something. Okay. If you want to select something in Rhino, there's a couple of ways you can do this. The most straightforward one is definitely to click on it like this. Now the object is selected, you get all these kinds of colored lines coming from it, which we will cover shortly, and then you get the properties on the lower right side. Now what happens if I want to select the 3 of them? Then I can go ahead and from the top view, click and hold, start moving, and you get a kind of square. If everything is inside the square, I let go of the mouse, then everything is selected. The same thing happens in the perspective, and of course the right view. Now, there is something specific that reminds us all back to the times of AutoCAD, where you can go ahead and be more precise in how this square works. For example, if I start on the top left and move this direction, then you see the square is blue. But if I start here, click and go in the other direction, the square has a dotted line around it. That is because it's an inherently different way of interacting with the objects. Let's try this out. For example, if I start on the upper left corner and drag it down, and notice how I am only partially going into the peripheral objects, and one of the 3, it's actually 100% inside of this square. Only the one that is 100% inside will get selected. The ones that are partially inside the blue square won't be selected. Let's see, I'm going to let go now. Ta-da! So basically now we only have one object selected. This seems very slow and elemental and fundamental, but trust me, you will need this kind of precision the second that we leave the easy boxes. So bear with me just a little bit longer so that you can see what happens when I do the same blue square, but I'm going to draw it from the other way around. Meaning I'm going to start at the lower right corner, click and drag sideways. Notice how the blue corner is now dotted. One of the red squares is 100% inside, and 2 of them are partially inside. When I let go, everything is selected. That means that if I go from one side to the other, only the ones that are 100% inside is going to be selected. Let go. And if I go from the lower right to the top left, exemplified here, displayed here by the dotted line, everything that is being touched by the square is going to be selected. There we go. Now let's move on to another crucial part of understanding Rhino, which is the gumball. The gumball is those lines with different colors that are popping out of a selected object. Let's zoom right in to better visualize it. And actually, let me select these 2 and let's get rid of them. Now I'm going to select one, and you can see here that the gumball is these axes coming out from that object. If I move around, those axes move with it. There is a lot you can do with the gumball. Let's try. First up is we can just move the object around, locking in one specific axis, being it in the perspective or any other view. We can rotate it in a specific axis or the other axis or the other axis in whichever viewport we would like. Now let's move closer into the gumball and notice that there are even more lines attached to it. Like for example, that tiny square over here and this tiny square over there. Let's see what that does. Let's click on the green one and pull it. That is actually and essentially scaling the object in one particular dimension at a time. The same thing can happen with the red and with the blue one. Then there is another one, which is the circle. If I do this, if I click on this, we actually get a full menu about the gumball, meaning if I want to relocate it, reset it, or auto reset it. For example, if I want to relocate it, I click here, and then it asks me where do I want the gumball to be placed. For example, here. There it is. And then the projected end of this corner. Again, if I want to relocate this, make sure to get the project out and then click wherever you want the gumball to go. And then set up the X direction and then the Y direction. So see how you can completely change the orientation of the gumball by just relocating it. And if you don't want this, we click again into that particular circle, reset gumball, and then it goes straight where it was. What else do we have here? We have a square with 4 quadrants that basically is going to allow you to move the object locked in two particular axes at the same time. So this same square, you can find it also at the left view or the top view, but now it's going to be linking two different axes at the same time. Now, if you thought that was it, there is more. Now, what happens if I hold down the Option key and pull on the green arrow? It's going to copy it. The same thing if I do it again with the rotating, and now I have two objects, one on top of each other, which I can move away from each other. It's a good idea to take a second and play around with this a little bit so that you realize that the gumball is actually your friend. Now, let's stay on the selection for a second and let's try something different. Let's notice how when I click on an object, I always select the full object at the same time. Now I wonder, what happens if I just want to select this edge right here? There's a way to do this by Control, Shift, and clicking on the edge allows me to pick just one edge straight away. I'm going to repeat that. Shift, Command, click, and click. So now I can select two of them at the same time. Now what happens if I move it? We're going to start seeing straight away the power of modeling in Rhino. Just moves with it. It even goes further. Notice how when I select an edge, there is a circle that appeared in the middle of the arrow. If I click on it and push it up, then it actually and essentially is going to extrude that edge into a surface. It goes further if I go backwards, and in that direction as well, and it keeps going. So I am already generating a lot of geometry just by using the gumball. Next up is we're going to check the snap. Now, snap is something crucial and incredibly important as an architect because we always want to reference an already drawn point to do a next point. So that is essentially snap. It's not a big deal for animators and render artists. It's a big deal for us. So let's try to use that a little bit just to exemplify what it can do. Let's go back to the box command. Let's have a box. And now, for example, I want to draw another box. I hold down the space bar to repeat the last command. And I want to draw another box by using the existing one. For example, I want to go close to this vertice and notice how it says real big end. Now, what is that? That is a snap point that has been defined as an end point. Now you can pick which of these snap points are going to be active and interacting with you in the middle of a command, before a command, after a command, anytime you want, basically. So in a Mac, we get a list of them here on the left side: end, near, point, midpoint. For example, if I deselect end, I want to try to go and get that point again. Notice how it won't do anything. It's going to call near. Near is different. Near is any point of a vertex. Now let me take that one out as well to see what happens. And now near is nowhere to be found. Near is not working, but suddenly, pop, it's picking up a midpoint. So as you can see, midpoint here is being selected, so it's doing it. Now you can also try perpendicular and smart track, and all of these we're gonna check in detail later. But for now, it's important for you to see that you can snap to a specific point, for example, a midpoint, and use it as reference to draw the next geometry. If now I want to go to a midpoint again, I repeat the last command and I start over the way here. So as you can see, I'm using the already modeled points to keep going. You can go endlessly and keep going and just keep going. Why so much? Well, basically just because I can. That's it. Let's keep going. The viewports, there are 4, and the one that is blue is the one that is active. If I'm here, top is active. If I'm here, right is active. If I click here, perspective is active. Something else we could do is we can right click and select another view. We can set this viewport to something else, for example, to bottom. If I right click again, set view, I can set it to perspective. Now, we as an architect, if you want to take this information out, it's always a good idea to use the 2-point perspective, but we'll get to that later. Last but not least, sometimes we want to see the perspective in full view. That's very easy to do. Basically, just double click on perspective, and you should be able to be 100% in the perspective. If you want to go back, double click on it again, and you should be right back where you started. Now, before we move on, crucial, when you're dealing with very big objects or with a lot of very high building or a different objects everywhere, as I'm trying to do here as quickly as I can, you're going to notice that it's very hard to navigate when there are too many objects because Rhino is not really made for that. So to circumvent this, we're going to use a specific command many times over to follow our courses, which is going to be zoom selected. For this, we select one object and we type in ZS for zoom selected, enter. That way, when I start orbiting around it, it will feel more intuitive. Now, the difference between using this and not using it is for you not visible and you cannot feel it just by looking at me. Just know that we will use this a lot so that the navigation runs smoother. Let's keep going. Next up is the display mode. Now, as you can see here, I can see this has a specific name to it, which is called shaded. It means that I have a solid that is being shaded in OpenGL so that I can see its volumetrics and have a different shades depending on the side for my eye to understand that there is an edge between them, right? But there's actually many ways that Rhino can show you this information. On the right and top and right view, this is all being set up as wireframe, meaning that we can only see the lines of the object. We can interexchange this and even have more different ones, as I'm going to show you right now. To change this, let's right click on a specific view and make sure that you can see here all the different display modes that you can set up for this particular viewport. Right now, as I mentioned, it was in shaded. Let's go quickly just to wireframe to show you the difference. Now I am able to see the backline of it. This one is called wireframe. If I right click again, let's try one that's called rendered. That one may take a little longer to generate and basically just shows you a rendered view in a very simple white model. Let's try a different one. Ghosted, for example. it shows me basically shaded, but with a ghost-like display to see a little bit of what's going on behind it. X-ray, for example, it's shaded, but you can see completely through it, and so on and so forth. For now, I advise you to keep it shaded and know that you can change this if you wanted to. So now you should be able to know where everything is and understand basically how Rhino works, and you should be ready to start modeling. See you in the next one.